This vast, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning. I have had the pleasure of spending a lot of time in monasteries. I've had a lot of amazing moments there. Sometimes totally unexpected, just like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. And other times I'll say a little more expected, like beautiful rituals and special services, especially the monasteries that do big, Shokin calls them high mass, especially when you do the big special services. You kind of expect when you have 50 monks marching around together with 30 bells and having some monks throwing cards up and money up, you expect that to be moving. But it's the unexpected ones that are always really special. I have not been spending too much time at monasteries the last few years. Partially when I lived up in Michigan, it was too long of a drive to go to Ramonji regularly, and flying to Shasta Abbey is an ordeal, and it was much too far to drive to Shasta Abbey. And then the lockdown happened, so I haven't been any place for, I'll say, too long. But so what I'm trying to do is do a little monastic practice in my home. And I know I talk about this a lot, bring our practice into daily lives. And that's an important thing for me. Nona, my first teacher, always said monastic practice was easy because everything's set up for it. If you missed morning zazen, somebody comes and looks for you. At home, if I miss my zazen, I'm in bed, nobody cares. So it's totally up to me to get up and get on my cushion. So how can I bring part of that monastic practice to my daily life? I spent an awful lot of time in kitchens in my time at monastery. A lot of it revolved around food, either as kitchen work or as an oryoki. After the first time I spent 3 months at a monastery, my son asked me about it, and he said, I read a book, Mom, and about being a year of living in a monastery. And the guy said monks were obsessed with food. Are they really? I said, yep, they are. When you're at a monastery, especially for a length of time, food is one of the few, I'll say, recreational experiences we have. And especially when you get in a place like Shasta Abbey, where monks go in and they are there for their life. And you go in with 3 robes and a bowl, and that's, you can own your shoes and underwear and a coat, and that's about it. Everything else is, especially for the first 5 years, you live in the zendo and you have one cupboard for your personal items. So food becomes your focus. And also, if you look at food, how many Zen stories revolve around food? Just think about rice, separating the rice from the sand, like eating a painted rice cakes. Dogen talks, one of his first things with the Tenzo was spreading mushrooms to dry. There's so many Zen stories about food. Food is important because we can do without a lot of things we have in our life. We cannot go without food. At Shasta Abbey, I spent almost a full year in the kitchen as a kitchen monk. There are usually 5 or 6 kitchen monks, and the Tenzo was always a senior monk, a very senior monk. Spending time in the kitchen, my first time there, the Tenzo said 4-9 day, which is the day off for monks. It means we only spend 4-9 means we spend from 4 in the morning to 9 at night in the kitchen. So it's her day off. You spend a lot of time there, and every day you're making 3 meals a day for 25 to 150 monks or lay people. Very bonded with these people. Every Tenzo I worked with, we have a special bond. Real strong place in my heart. And sometimes we'd get lunch ready and we'd be a little early for lunch. So at 11 o'clock, we'd have a little tea, have a piece of candy or sometimes cheese or nuts and a cup of coffee or tea. And we'd sit and chat for 5 minutes. I think I can remember every one of those chats we had. Just to sit and chat. And sometimes the Tenzo would give us a little lesson. And one of those lessons was the Tenzo said, what a responsibility it is to be the Tenzo, because you have to keep the monks healthy, happy, and provide meals on time. When the bell rings, you have to have lunch on the table. You know, the monks are in at 6 o'clock for dinner. You know, everybody has a busy day. You have to have it ready. And then on Shishin's practice periods, it's in the schedule. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's scheduled. You have to be ready by then. And I have so many wonderful memories of coming in, and like all winter, I was in charge of the boiler. I'd fill up the boiler, start the hot water. So we'd start the boiler to heat our water. So by the time breakfast was done, we'd have hot water for dishes. Chopping wood and carrying wood. Luckily, we didn't have to carry water. But every day, get that boiler going. And there was such a feeling of being an important part of that monastery by doing that. The importance of not wasting food. And I still carry this into my life. Open the refrigerator. What's turning? What do I need to fix? And at the monastery, it was always sad to open up, go out, walk into the walk-in and see a box of peppers that somehow got forgotten. It's like, oh, this huge box of red peppers, you have to take it out to the compost pile. And I feel the same way in my refrigerator. Oh, how could I forget my head of lettuce? I love lettuce. And I pick it up and it's unedible. It's like, to the compost. But even after feeling like what you're doing is so important, once after a very special meal and great dessert, the dessert was a 3-day affair that one of the monks did. And he was very proud of it. And in perfect Zen teacher way, the abbot ate the dessert and said, it's very good. And you realize that whenever anybody serves a wonderful meal like this, everybody thanks the Tenzo. Don't forget to thank the treasurer for balancing the books. It's like, yeah, we're all important in the temple. Everybody, every single person that walks through this door is important. But I thought it was a great warning for us monks, kitchen monks, not to get a big head over what we do. The instructions for the Tenzo by Dogen gives us so much to think about when we walk into our kitchens. And this is when we walk into our kitchens at our home too. One of my old teachers was giving a class on the Tenzo Kyokan. And he said, don't do the happy dance when you have good food. And very out of character, he got up and did this little jig. And he was definitely one that loved his fine foods. And that was a real important lesson for me that I have to learn while making meals, both at home and the temple. The actual passage of Dogen stresses when you have a great fruit, such as a mango, it's not as good as a small offering. Because if that small offering is sincere, it's better than the great insincere grapefruit, great mango offering. And in typical Dogen fashion, he emphasizes, this is the right practice for people. Both the great cream soup and he calls it the wild grass soup, still will nourish the sacred body. And at Ramanji, someone would bring these wonderful, yummy, fresh baked breads. And it was really hard for me in the kitchen not to be seized by greed, just like, oh, good bread. It's like, no, it's just bread. I'd serve it when it was fresh. It'd be on the table the next meal, but worked really hard not to do my happy dance about this great bread. All food is equal. This summer, I joined a CSA, and occasionally I'd go pick up my box of food, and it'd be mostly zucchini. And it's the opposite of the happy dance. It's like, oh, man, more zucchini face. It's like, no, it's all the same. Let's figure out a way to cook 10 pounds of zucchini for us this week. And then the next week I'd have a bunch of cherry tomatoes. And again, don't do the happy dance. It's like, okay, let's just roast them and put them in the freezer. Eat my fill, but there's way too much to eat. And it's real interesting to look at food as food and not as great food and not as, oh man, do I have to eat this food? And that's a nice practice to get into. Not that I don't like good food. When I come to Des Moines, if somebody says, let's go to this great restaurant, I'll say yes. And I will eat the great food and I will appreciate it. But it would be just as nice to be invited to somebody's house and have granola. And it's important to look at food that way. Boy, there's just so much in this passage by Dogen, Instructions for the Tenzo. And there's a lot about wasting food. And there's a wonderful passage in Den Kuroku. And it's like, one of these days I'm going to do a Dharma talk and not go back to that Transmission of the Light, where it talks about everybody's enlightenment story from Buddha to Dogen. And the passage of Raghurata, there's a monk that lived 1,000 years as a tree fungus because he wasted dana. And every time I toss food into the compost bin, I think, there's some time as a tree fungus. Because not that I live on dana, but it's all the same, whether I get my, make my living by working a 40-hour week job, or whether somebody gives me money. It's all dana. Anything that comes into our house is dana. It's gifts from the universe, no matter how we earn it. So man, don't waste that food, because nobody wants to live 1,000 years as a tree fungus. Whether it's scraping out the bowls before you put your food in the dishwater, or making sure you don't let that head of romaine lettuce get pushed behind the other stuff. And that is Dogen. And as he said, this is a right practice for people. I probably should have broke this up into 2 talks, and I would have felt now that I'm done with the talk, I felt like I could have done 2 talks, but I'm going to do I'm going to do part 2, and that's the actual eating in monasteries. Oryoki, 3 bowls. Oryoki means just enough. The 3 bowls themselves are important. As we saw last week when we had a priest ordination, one of the things Ado gave Kurt was his Buddha bowls. And that is when you take your priest vows, you get your own set of bowls, and you carry them with you wherever you go. It consists of a napkin, a little tablecloth, 3 to 5 bowls, chopsticks, spoon, setsu. That's something to clean out the bowls with. That is all you need to eat. It's a very stylized way of eating. We chant, we all sit, we set out our bowls together, we open our bowls together, we eat together, we wait for seconds together. It's all together. You have to pay attention. Then we get up and leave together. Oryoki was really hard for me when I first started. I'll say it's hard for everyone. I'd leave a 3-day shishin so hungry because I was so concerned about folding my napkins right and not clanking my bowl. Because at the time, if you could hear people clanking their bowl with their spoon, the abbot would say, "Eat quietly." And it's like, so you eat really quiet. And then you have to eat yogurt with chopsticks. How do you eat yogurt with chopsticks? But in our first temple, we passed the bowls from one to another, passed the bowls to our server. And when you had 15 people, it was a long time before you could start eating. But there was something so intimate about passing the bowls. Probably also a little germy, which is why most temples don't do that. But it was so, you pick up the bowl and pass it to the next person. And you create such a bond between the people around that table. Then you'd eat together. And with the passing bowls, occasionally the dog underneath the table would get a treat. I know a few times they got a nice bowl of granola. But it was special. And I miss that. I miss that closeness that you get in a monastic practice. I always thought my mom would have loved this eating style. Each one of us kids, we have our bowls, we're responsible. You wrap it up, you leave it on the table for the next meal. It's an easy, efficient way of eating. Shohaka Okamura has a chapter in his Living by Vow where he discusses the meal chants. And he discusses them better than anything I could say. So it's a long chapter, but it says a lot. And he talks a lot about Dogen. So if you read that, this is good. This is a good book. I'd advise everybody to take it, but read the chapter on meal chants. One thing he discussed that I'm going to touch on, which I think is so important, he says, just let Dharma be the food and the food be the Dharma. This is how I like to look at food. The preparation and the eating of food is Dharma. And like we say every day, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. That is a wonderful way to look at food. So what is gained by this style of eating? the silence. The chanting's important. First, we set out the bowls. Then we kind of go through Buddha's life. Then we go through all the names of Buddhas. There's a few lines that hit me. Innumerable labors have brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. This seems so important in this time. When we sit down, I'll say, eat a piece of chicken. Where does the chicken come from? What kind of life did the chicken have? Who brought us that chicken? Who sold us the chicken? What the meat packers have to do to put that chicken in a nice little plastic wrap? We have choices here. The next line, which I think is real important to me personally, is receiving this offering. We should consider our virtue and practice deserve it. Then it goes on to say we eat to attain the Buddha way. If we look at everything we eat as, I can kind of say this and it can get in kind of a twisty, icky way. Do I deserve this food? Ugh. Of course we do. Because we are eating to attain the Buddha way. Our food is Dharma. And if we treat it as Dharma, it's Dharma. Eating is a part of so many spiritual practices. In my German Lutheran childhood, we always said grace before meals. And it was this time to stop. Everybody blah, 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 comes to, all six of us would sit down, fold our hands, bow our heads, and spend 30 seconds centering ourselves, pulling ourselves together. Years and years ago, I read that people that eat breakfast standing up are more likely to die of a heart attack. This was way before people would go through drive-ins and grab their egg sandwich and eat it on the way to work. I was probably in my early 20s, and I thought, that makes sense. And I think of that every time I eat standing up. It's like, yes, it made sense 40 years ago, and it still makes sense. Sit down, eat, ground and center. Family meals have always been important to me. I've always had no TV, no electronics at the table during family dinner, because that is when you catch up. And I try to pull that into my daily practice. In Oryoki, we're eating together, not jabbering. We don't get up until everybody's finished. It's a ritual. Food as ritual, food as dharma. You have to pay attention. Otherwise, you drop one of your chopsticks. And since we're all quiet, you're sitting there at Romanji, you hear that chopstick, ding, 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 ding. And everybody looks up, who dropped the chopstick? We try not to. That's what we do. And when you're being served, you have to pay attention. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole lot of oatmeal. You have to say, stop. Pay attention. Pay attention to what you're eating and how you're eating. And the interesting thing is, food in the Oryoki bowl, on a whole, always tastes better because you're paying attention. That oatmeal in the morning, just plain oatmeal, can be so good because you're paying attention. Each bite you taste. So something I bring home is the the line, we eat to end all evil, to practice good, to save all beings, and to embody the Buddha way. That's not the gata people are supposed to say before they eat. But that's what I like to say before I eat anything. That is my home quick meal gata. We eat to end all evil, to practice good, to save all beings. 3 pure precepts. That's what we're supposed to be doing with our life anyway. Ending evil, do good, save all beings. Live to benefit all beings. And to embody the Buddha way. I know we're supposed to practice Zazen, do our practice with no goal in mind. We don't practice to make ourselves better. When I wanted to be ordained, Nonan said, "Why do you want to be ordained?" I said, "I want to make the world a better place." He said, "What's wrong with it now?" It's like, yep. But we all know that something does change when we practice. We all know that sitting Zazen makes our world a better place, even if it's just this little world right here. So if I can bring my daily practice into how I eat, as Dogen said, this is a right practice for people. Pay attention, and we live to benefit all beings. And occasionally, if you want to have some fun at home, do a formal Oryoki meal. Just go through the chants yourself, serve yourself. You can do it by yourself. And you can say, yeah, this is interesting. Don't know if I want to eat this way at home all the time, but do a formal meal and enjoy yourself. Eat well.
Penetrate to each thing in all places, so that we may every sentient being together can realize the Buddha way. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The